Woman Who Chat is sponsored by Grow Radio. Grow Radio is an online radio station dedicated to bringing you a different podcast on the hour, every hour. I'm proud that Woman Who Chat is played on Grow Radio every Tuesday at 3 p.m. and Friday at 8 a.m. and to be a part of their podcasting community. If you want to listen to the station, explore their shows, check out many of the blogs to improve your podcasting skills, or get your podcast onto Grow Radio, head over to growradio.uk today. Welcome to Woman Who Chat, and today I'm chatting to Emma Hine of Emma Hine Strategy. Hello, Emma.
Hello, thank you so much for having me today.
It's great to have you here, and you came into my world last year. You were my business coach for a spell on a particular program. And what I loved about your sort of way of working was it was so relaxed, it was so nice, it was so open, and I wanted to find out a bit more about you. So I bombed up the motorway and came to your growth event, which was absolutely fantastic. I loved being in the room. There was a real buzz about it, and you had some great speakers. So I thought, what better to get you on here and find out a little bit more. So hello.
Hello, I am so pleased you came to the growth event. That is the heart and soul of my business. That event is what really lights me up.
Yeah, I'm disappointed I can't make the next one. Anyway, let's find out. So you weren't born a business strategist. You obviously have a backstory, and I know what you do now, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But yeah, tell us how you got here.
Yeah, so my backstory, I'm going to keep this as short and sweet as I can because I could talk about this all day. So my backstory, I started in corporate. I was in corporate. I wasn't unhappy in my corporate job. I was fortunate. A lot of people, don't like what they do. I was happy. However, I sort of wanted more freedom. I didn't want to be reporting to somebody, having to go and ask for a day off or to be able to take the children to different events. So I wanted something a little bit more that enabled me to be who I am. So I decided to launch my own business because in my mind, if I'm my own boss, I have much more opportunity to create something that enables me to be more flexible with my time, which is what to me it was valuable. So I launched an e-commerce business. Now this is back in 2006. So I've been playing this business game for quite some time. The business grew quite quickly. I was very fortunate that, I was able to put my time and effort into it. I had worked in strategy within my corporate role, so I sort of knew what I needed to be doing. Although it is, I'm going to say, completely different when you do it on your own than it is when you're doing it as part of a bigger company. So I'd got a lot of the tools in my toolbox. So the business started to grow quite quickly. We went from starting in a home, which is, where a lot of e-commerce businesses start out, into, our first premises, outgrowing that into second and into finally, a really big premises. And the same with staff. We started with nobody. Before we know it, there was 2 people, 3 people, 9 people working for us. So the business grew very quickly. And before we knew it, we were turning over, and by this point, probably really high, multi-6 figures. We stuck around that 800,000 mark for quite a long time and just couldn't push it past that mark for one reason or another. So externally, the business was doing really well. We were making money, we were supporting staff, we were having the holidays. I was getting to do all of the lovely luxury things that you can do when you've got the money coming through. But whilst this was happening, I sort of forgot what my purpose was. I forgot my reason for starting that business. And before you know it, I was working 90-ish hours a week. I was having less freedom than ever because I was sort of tied to having to do this or having to take the laptop on holiday with me. So the business completely took over my life. And it turned into a monster. I think that's the fairest way to call it. And I always talk about, we can have something around us that makes us look super, super successful. And my business did, but I never felt like a successful person. My mental health took a toll. I became a very unhappy business. By this time, the business is turning over in excess of £1 million. It's, it is a very, financially successful business, but I never felt successful. So the point came where, there's a really messy bit in the middle, but the point came where I thought I can't do this anymore. And this was probably 10 years of feeling so unhappy in my business, but keeping going, keeping plodding on. And I just thought, I can't do this anymore. And I had to make a decision that was very drastic, but for me, it was the only decision to make, which was to make a decision to say, I'm walking away. I'm not going to do this anymore because this is not giving me what I want. Yes, it's making me look like I've got all of the things that anybody could possibly ever want, but it wasn't giving me what I wanted. So that's sort of like my backstory that brings me to the point where Emma Hine strategy started to evolve.
I think that's so common with business owners. Some of the things you were saying there, I resonated with because I started a business in 2007 and grew that business. It was a solicitor's practice and grew the team. We had a team of 12. And it did get to the stage where I was just keeping going for the staff and for the clients, but put myself at the bottom of the pile. And it's really important that you've got to love what you do. You've absolutely got to find your purpose and love what you do. So during that period, what did keep you going? I mean, were you doing it for the staff and the clients, or why did you? That 10 years is a long period to just keep churning through when you're so unhappy doing something.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of work on this over the last couple of years, so I can answer that question now. But at the time, I don't know why I was doing it, is the honest answer. I don't think I knew any different. I think in my mind, it was a belief that if I just kept going, at some point, it's going to get easier because, the freedom has to come eventually. I'll be able to let go. I'll be able to do these things. So I think it was just a case of I didn't know any different. It's all that I knew. But now, because I've done all of that inner work and I've really, spent time investing in myself to understand who I am and what I am, I know that it was because in my mind, I was told as a child by a teacher that I would never make anything of myself. And I think that was something that subconsciously got ingrained in me. And everything I did, even going back to my corporate career, when I look about it, was about making myself look like I had made something of myself. And that at the detriment of that was that I took myself out of the equation, because the easiest way to, make lots of money, to be able to buy lots of things that makes people think that you've got this great life, this great lifestyle, is to throw yourself into the business and just work really hard. That was my belief. That was what I thought I needed to do. The harder I worked, the more successful that I am effectively going to look and become. And it's sad, isn't it, that we do these things without actually realizing that actually what we've grown is the total opposite of what we started off to do. Because I certainly didn't start off to have, a business that was making me so unhappy.
I think the thing is, when you go into business, it becomes your baby, it becomes all consuming, you want to be, at the start, you want to be working. I mean, my ex said I was married to my laptop because he used to call it the ace of God, because I was always on it. I just felt as if I couldn't put it down. I didn't have a holiday, I didn't have a break, I was working stupid hours, worked out I was earning probably about £1 an hour, if that, at the time, for the hours I was putting in. And it just isn't, as you say, success really for people doesn't have to be monetary, it doesn't have to be physical things, it's inner work as well, isn't it? So how have you sort of molded into Emma Hine's strategy, and what now does success look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, success looks exactly like it did back in 2006. To me, success is still very much about having that freedom-based lifestyle, that ability to be able to not only pick when I work, but who I work with and how I do it. All of the things that I do, I want them to be things that light me up. I want them to be things that I enjoy doing, because one, we're here to be happy. When we don't want to be unhappy people. But also, I really believe that the happier I am as a person, the more that I can give to other people, the better that I can serve my clients, the better, mum I can be, the better nanny I can be, and all of that stuff. So I now realize that, by doing what I did before, in effect, I was letting down the people that I was trying to be there for the most, if that makes sense. So for me, it's still very much about freedom. But what I did back in 2021, when I started to make these changes to my business, which is now sort of closed down as such, was I started to do a lot of inner work and started to really get to understand who I was again. Because I say again, I don't think I ever knew who I was. I don't think I'd ever done any work on, who is Emma? What does Emma enjoy doing? What does Emma want to do with her life? I think I just based it all on what I assumed were the right things for me to do, what I assumed were the things that were going to make me, be a happy person. Because that's all I ever wanted. And what kept coming back to me over and over again was this mass desire to not want anybody else to ever feel that they couldn't, one, have a business that they loved, but two, couldn't turn around and say, do you know what, I've done something and I don't like it and I want to do something differently. And I think that was the key thing that kept coming across to me. At the beginning, I had no idea how I was going to do that. Absolutely no idea. I just knew that I needed to do that somehow.
Yeah, and I think, quite often we do carry on. It's that swan syndrome, isn't it? We've got the beautiful gliding swan, everything looks rosy, yet we're paddling like crazy underneath. And I think sometimes we just keep going because we don't want to admit, and it's pride in a way, and we don't want to admit it's not failure as such, but we don't want to admit that we've taken a wrong turn or we don't really enjoy what we're doing. I mean, it took me an ankle break to realize that, you know, I was forced to stop and reevaluate, and as you say, to find who you are, because I'd lost my identity, became the business rather than the business becoming taken on my persona. I'm all about personal brand. I'm all about putting yourself out there, but you have to be the real you. And I think quite often and when I was running my solicitor's practice, I actually dressed like I thought a solicitor should dress. I presented myself like I thought a solicitor should be, corporate and professional and all that, which wasn't really me. I love wearing red, and I like having fun and doing things and bucking the trend. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? We think we should be in this place and we put on this persona where really inside we're just melting and wanting to do something completely different.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's almost like we're sort of coded somehow as human beings to assume what we think we should be, because we are human and we are individual. And, you can be a solicitor that wears red, that, bucks the trend and does all of that stuff. But it's right, isn't it? There's an assumption that, a solicitor looks like a certain way and they behave in a certain way and they say things in a certain way. And that's something that I really want to change. That is something that I really want people to get comfortable with, actually just being themselves. And if that means, you don't have the big words, you don't wear the suit, that doesn't mean you cannot be super, super successful doing whatever you want to do. You absolutely can. You absolutely can.
And just looking back to what you said earlier about the teacher, and now this isn't a dig at teachers, because my son, my daughter-in-law are teachers. I've got teachers in the family. That teacher saying to you, "You'll never make anything of yourself." I think it's teachers sometimes don't realize the impact they can have on a young person in their very early years, and they say something. I mean, I was written off at secondary school totally. I was trained to be a housewife because there was no hope for me ever going to university, and I was told that. So it was never an option for me. It wasn't till later in years I actually went to university and did a law degree. But teachers saying that at a young age, we're so receptive to that, and it can actually change our whole direction.
Yeah, completely. I mean, at the time, it meant nothing to me because, I was a teenager and yes, I wasn't, your dream student or, behaving in a way that probably I should have been behaving. But I was far from, a write-off. I was far from, never being able to pick myself up and, do all of the things. But I think people don't do it on purpose. I'd like to think people don't do it on purpose anyway, but I think we do it as parents to a certain extent, don't we? Without realizing we're doing these things, the things that we say to our children, and money doesn't grow on trees, and all of these things that we say and do, we just don't always realize, do we, that the impact potentially that could have on that person. I mean, it might not do. For some people, it might never affect them at all. But for others, now we're getting more understanding of like mindset and how we work as people. And now we're getting more knowledge and awareness of this stuff. I think it's becoming more clear to us, isn't it? We have to be really careful about how we talk and how we communicate with people. And it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, obviously, I was in school, quite a long time ago. So it's not, I'd like to think that perhaps that wouldn't be how, how things would be dealt with now. But yeah, it is really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was very lucky. Have got a very strong mother. And, when I was little, she used to always say to me, you can be anything you want to be. Don't let anybody tell you different. You can be anything you want to. And I believed her. I really did. I lost my way along the way sometimes, but I always kept coming back to that. And I realized that, when I get out of bed in the morning, if I don't like what I'm doing, I've got the power to change it and do something different. Whereas a lot of people were told negative things. So I'm very grateful for that from my mother for saying that. Was a lot I'm not grateful for, but I'm very grateful for that. Let's talk about your challenge, because you've got a challenge on right now. You wanted to do 50 podcasts this year. So come on, what's the reasoning behind that? What was your drive behind that?
It's my 50th this year, so I turned 50 this year, and I decided to come into the year determined to, do things a little bit differently, to really push myself beyond my comfort zone, because I have become comfortable. I have settled into a place where, I'm happy, I'm plodding along, I'm doing the things, but I know there's lots more that I want to do. I know there's lots more that I want to give, both personally and in my business. So I thought, right, I'm going to come into this year, use the fact that I'm 50 as the perfect excuse. I'm going to set myself new challenges sort of every month and say, what are you going to do? And I am launching a podcast later this year. So podcasts were completely in my mind in terms of, what's happening and what I want to get involved in. So I knew that getting on podcasts was going to be something that I wanted to do. So I thought it's going to be 50. So every challenge that I've got links around this number 50. So getting on 50 podcasts just became my challenge.
And how are you getting on?
The current marking, it's actually gone up slightly. I was in the month where I'd set myself the challenge, I hit 42, and I've booked on 2 more since. So I'm on 44. So I'm nearly there, which is amazing. And, I started at the beginning of, well, it's 5 weeks ago. That's all, 5 weeks ago.
And I'm sure by the time our listeners are listening or watching this, you'll have hit your 50 and smashed it.
Hopefully.
And I think it's lovely when you set yourself a challenge, and everyone comes on to help you and support you realize that challenge as well. But you have to put it out there. You have to say, I want to do X, otherwise you're never going to move forward, are you? So congratulations on that. So you talked about, success to you meant freedom. So how are you helping your clients in realizing that? Because a lot of the work you do with Emma Hine's strategy is around, helping them find their own success and what success looks like to them. So what are you working on there?
For me, it's whatever I do, however anybody works with me, the first part of working with me is always going to be about, getting to understand what success means to you, which is actually quite an uncomfortable process to go through. I know that because I've been doing that work a lot myself over the last few years. But, it's always about, before we even get into strategy and what plans you need to put in place, it's really important that you actually understand what you are aiming for. So, we have to understand the destination, but we've got to enjoy the journey. And if we're going to enjoy the journey, we've got to understand what makes us happy, what we enjoy doing. So, whatever program people work on with me, whether it's in my membership, on my mastermind, working with me one-to-one, we are going to get deep and dirty into, understanding your version of success. And that is going to involve me being the child, because I am going to be constantly asking you why. Why do you want to do that? And why do you want to do that? And what is that going to give you? Because I think, the deeper we delve into that, the sooner we can get to understand, what is going to give us what we ultimately want to get, because that is what is going to make you feel successful. And that is what you want to have.
I think that's really important. And it's, defining your own success. As we say, my success isn't your success. Well, my success is freedom as well. My office is a handbag, and anywhere that I can work remotely and do something completely different. So what have you got on the horizon? What's coming up?
It's more events. I realized last year when I first launched the growth event that, being in a room with people is a massive passion of mine. Being able to bring people together and connect people together is a massive passion of mine, and something that I really missed. I didn't get any of that in my old business. So, for me, more events, in-person stuff will definitely be happening. And also, I have my first mastermind this year, so I'm getting to work with a group of people very closely, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, it's going to be a great year.
It sounds fantastic. I always ask my guests to leave the audience with a top tip or piece of advice, something that they can either put into action or learn from. What would your piece of advice be?
think we've sort of already covered this, but I'm going to reiterate it and just add a little bit more detail around it. But I think when you're building a business, it's really important that you grow alongside that business. I believe that to get a successful business, you have to grow with it. You have to work on your mindset. You have to work on who you are and what you want to be. And the starting point for that has to be to get to really understand what it is you are aiming for. What is your reason for doing this? What does success look like to you? Now, we spoke a second or two ago about this. Yes, we need to understand the destination. That is what your version of success is. That is your destination. But along the way, you've got to enjoy the journey. So whatever you create in terms of your business model, the people that you work with, the products and the services that you create and put out there, it's really important that all of those are built with this version of success in mind, because you want to enjoy that journey. You want to enjoy today, because this sounds terrible, but today is the only guarantee. So you want to make sure that you enjoy today as much as you enjoy tomorrow whilst you're working towards that destination. And the key thing to make that happen and to take away that overwhelm is just really to start to break that down. I say set a massive goal and then break it down into smaller tasks and just focus on today's task. One task at a time is all it takes to make that dream come true.
I think that's such a valuable lesson, because so often we're racing ahead to the future and the destination. We're going 100 miles an hour, but we forget to enjoy the journey that we're on. We forget to look out of the window, in effect, appreciate the view. And I think, that's what I've learned. And I think, you talked about the business that didn't give you success, the business that you were in that you didn't like. And I think it's important to say here that actually that isn't a waste of time, because the learning you've taken from that, you can now build into your current business and think, well, that's what I don't want, and this is what I do want. So to anyone listening, it's not about saying you've failed in the past or anything's been a mistake. It's a learning curve to get to that eventual destination where you want to be. But live for today, really, and make the most of it and appreciate it. It's been fantastic chatting to you. I could chat a whole lot more. I'm going to pop your links in the show notes so that people can get in touch with you. Today, I've been chatting with Emma Hine of Emma Hine Strategy. Thank you.
Thank you.